The condition is really crazy condition.
I mean, that shouldn't give away the whole secret to professional windsurfing.
Maciek, giving Antoine Albo a run for his money. Here we go. What a finish.
The guy is kind of talking bullshit.
The team's just got to work a little harder. Welcome to the Windsurfing podcast, back again for episode 58. And this week we have a super interesting podcast because we have probably the biggest sail brand in the world. Yes, but they left windsurfing a few years ago, but they are now back. They have just relaunched. We're going to talk to them about new technologies. We're going to talk to them about cloth. We're going to talk to them about performance. We're going to talk to them about why they're coming back and why the delay. We're going to talk to them about duotone, yes, and how that whole situation came about. Confusing for some of the people in the know will understand, but I think it's going to open a few people's eyes to what happened and how it was. Lots to talk about in this one. Like I say, super interesting, just relaunching. It is, of course, North Windsurfing.
Chris, Peter, how are you guys doing? Thank you for taking the time.
Awesome, Maciek. How are you?
I'm good.
Very good, guys. Very good.
I literally just got off the plane and recording this from my van, so let's see how that goes. Not at first, though.
The van studio.
Yeah. For maybe like wider public purposes, is there a chance that you guys could just like introduce yourself in terms of like, obviously your name, but also like your position and role at North Sails, which is what we're going to talk about, North Windsurfing, for today's episode.
Cool. Peter, you want to go first?
All good. So I'm Peter Bijl. Obviously, I think a lot of people will know me from my past. I obviously worked for Neopride for a long time. After that, moved on, did some Angulo stuff, did some gun sail stuff, and then just a little over 2 years ago, I got invited to join the North crew, and obviously, based on me being in the Netherlands and my past experiences of running R&D for Neopride for a long time, being a professional rider, and them knowing that I moved back to the Netherlands was kind of a match made in heaven. As the North Sails for windsurfing, at least the headquarters is out of Katwijk, the Netherlands, so they wanted to keep the development close to their home, and they thought of me, and so I'm here, still in the industry after a long time.
Yeah, we go way back, don't we? Me and you.
Long way back. I remember you as a little scroungy kid on the beach in Webba when we were racing the Euro Cups and stuff like that. You were like 14 years old, getting your feet wet.
Yeah. Chris?
With your dad. Always. How was your dad anyway?
My dad, he sold his business and he bought a boat and he's just sailing like through, now he's in Cyprus and just cruising. So he's happy.
Legend, man. Legend. Yeah. Good for him.
Chris?
So I'm Chris Williams. I've been working for North for a long time, probably started in 1993. As a sailmaker. And it's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day, and around 95, after I'd done a few years of sailmaking, I was kind of at a crossroads. I grew up in a little sailing community in the New Orleans. And I kind of wanted to move away from there. And I was kind of trying to decide whether I'd go to like Hood River or Maui and make sails for windsurfing, because I was into windsurfing back then, or whether I'd try to do more bigger boat stuff. And I ended up moving to San Diego to build America's Cup sails for the 1995 America's Cup instead of doing the windsurfing path. So after all those years of doing big boat stuff, it's funny that I kind of came back full circle to where I kind of wanted to go when I was a little kid. So that's kind of cool. But after I made sails in San Diego in 1995, I got hired to be a sail designer and started designing sails around 1996 or so. Worked my way up into Grand Prix yacht racing sails after a few years, and designed for America's Cup teams, and I've raced for America's Cup teams, and been a professional sailor for the last 20 years or so, yacht sailing, my windsurfing. I've been a windsurfer for like 30 years, but Peter's seen me. I do as much swimming as I do sailing when I'm out there, but I enjoy going out, lasting long.
Yeah.
And I could go straight and I could go relatively fast, but I'm nowhere near the level as all these guys are, and yourself, obviously. But I really enjoy the sport my entire life. In fact, I remember one of my neighbors when I was like 13 years old. He had a windsurfer that was sitting in his backyard. It's like O'Brien, had all these crazy concaves everywhere and shit, and he wasn't using it. And I was like, boy, I really want to windsurf. So I went up to him and knocked on his door. I'm like, hey, can I cut your grass all summer for your windsurfer? And he's like, sounds like a deal. So I got my own board when I was like 13 for cutting guys' grass. It's pretty fun.
So we got something in common, Chris. I learned how to windsurf on an O'Brien as well.
Oh yeah. Did you have all the little plastic board with like 50 channels under it and stuff?
No, it was about 55 kilos, but it gave me character, you know?
Yeah, exactly. No, it was indestructible, that's for sure.
I'm spoiled on that. I never used the dagger board in my life, so... So yeah, definitely spoiled there. Look, guys, when I do
those boards were like 15 feet long, so you needed the dagger board.
For sure.
Unless you're going downwind.
For sure. But you guys enjoyed it. That's really cool.
Yeah.
When I do these podcasts, I kind of try to get like an anchor point, like a beginning type story. And I guess for this project, for me, it really started when I heard some rumors like, the licensing agreement for the name North Sails 2 Boards and More, who was licensing that name at the time and is now producing sails under Duotone, is running out, and they're probably not going to renew it. And can you guys, from your perspective, and that's probably more a question to you, Chris, like elaborate what actually happened to kind of set the record straight for once?
Well, I think it's all been pretty well documented, and I don't think any of the stories out there that I've read are incorrect. I think right before the license agreement expired, Oakley Capital had purchased North Sails from Terry Kohler, who was a longtime owner of North Sails. And I think they had, or still do have, visions of really growing the brand, and that's not just focusing on yacht sales. That's, all things, wind sports, action sports, clothing, stuff like that. And at the same time, I assume that this I could be incorrect with, but I believe that Boards and More was also picked up by another private equity group. And I think obviously their goal is also to make profit. And I don't know what the royalty was, but whatever we were charging as a royalty or license royalty was a little bit more than they wanted. So they wanted to negotiate price down, and North, didn't want to drop the license royalty down any. And so they're at an impasse. And I'm still friends with Kai. And, I think it's interesting. I think they've done pretty well on their own without the North brand, which is interesting. So it'll be interesting to see how we can do using the North brand.
Yeah, it seemed like they took all the money they saved on that licensing agreement and then some, and put it in marketing. That was like they made sure that there's going to be a big push behind their new brand. And yeah, but anyway, so is it safe to say that the new in inverted commas North Sails wouldn't, or North Windsurfing wouldn't come to life if Boards and More and North kind of reached an agreement again to renew that? Or you reckon there was rumblings inside the group that you guys want to go into water sports with Oakley, with the new ownership?
Yeah, I think that's a safe assessment.
Right on. Okay. So, did you guys? What was the conversation like? Okay, so that licensing doesn't get renewed. Okay, let's do. Obviously, North Kiteboarding was under Boards and More a market leader. I don't know how the numbers are right now, whatever. But like, okay, let's do kiting. No brainer, right? Market leader. Let's do winging. Winging is booming. How was the conversation about windsurfing? I'm quite interested because the company's DNA is obviously sailing, and there's a water sports department now, the so-called Action Group, right? North
Action Sports Group.
Yeah, Action Sports Group. So how's the conversation from a bunch of dedicated sailors, yachtsmen, about windsurfing?
Well, I think it's interesting. A lot of the management team at North Sails, they're older sailors who are, in their 50s and 60s. And, people that age all used to windsurf, if you're a sailor, especially if you're European or whatever. And so a very good portion of the management team at North Sails has a windsurfing background. Maybe they're not windsurfers anymore, but they've enjoyed it. And I think from North Action Sports perspective, windsurfing is a good segue between the action sports like kiting and winging and yachting. We sort of fit in between. So it's a good bridge for bringing the technology that North has developed into the action sports group. But like you elaborated, you hinted, it's a lot easier to start with the kiting. Well, I shouldn't say it's easy. Mike and his team have done a fantastic job getting that going. And I don't think they're the market leader yet, but it should be relatively soon. And that's certainly North Action Sports Group's goal. So that's helped provide the income and the base and the revenue so that we could afford to spend a few years like Peter and I have done to help try to develop the windsurfing brand, which it's not easy trying to do what we've been doing.
Yeah, why was launching kiting so much easier than windsurfing and took such it took simply less time, right? Why is that?
I think kiting became a priority when they obviously had a design team at the ready. They took a few guys from Cabrina and they had a brand that was kind of up and running, and the designs were starting, and they were doing some pretty new stuff. They were able to get to market relatively easily, and I think as well, the kiting market is a bit bigger than the windsurfing market, so the decision to go for that may just be a little bit easier as well.
Yeah. And where were you, Pete, when the news broke? Like, okay, North Sails coming back. Did you know like way before? Were you like there from day one, or was it something like, oh, there might be an opportunity here? It's
No. I've been here from day one. So I pretty much, when I was at Gun Sales, I got offered a full-time job to run the brand itself at first. I wasn't in a position to do that with my kid. I've got a kid that has has a bit of let's say some health things. So I didn't really want to commit 100% to doing the full brand running. And I don't think that's my expertise either. I think my expertise is in R&D. But it got the conversation started. Then we designed a few sails with Mickey, who's another America's Cup designer. We got some sails in 3DI because in the beginning, the question was really, are we going to do 3DI? Are we going to do paneled sails? I was very much against following. I've been against following for quite a while. And I think we really needed to do something revolutionary, and North Sails had this beautiful technology, and we're a part of the North Technology Group. So for me, it was a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of situation. I pushed hard to get the 3DI going. We got some sails designed. I tried the first sails, and it was, for me, even though the designs were far from perfect, the feeling of the product and the way the 3DI responds and the durability and the weight are just unbelievable. So for me, it was like, okay, this is a no-brainer. This is the direction we got to go. and we set our sights on it. At that point, Chris started to get involved with a lot of, because it's not easy to go from a big boat sail, which, we're sailing key hangers. For these guys, what we are using are key hangers. And to go from a big boat sail to a little sail like a windsurfer, and all the production facilities and materials and methods and layups and everything, it's all based on big boats with tons of, when I say tons of downhaul, I think Chris can elaborate. It's actually what?
The America's Cup teams, it's massive, 5-6 tons. So, and we had to scale that down. So that's where Chris really came in the beginning. He handled things from manufacturing and designed a special mold for the windsurfing sail, etc. And then that's where Chris and my calibration started. So I kind of was attracted by the guys from the Netherlands, who was the old M Brands, which became North Action Sports Group. They got me in. They got some sails designed by Grace through North Sails. We got an in to the factory. And then once everything actually started rolling and it started to take shape and we knew what direction we wanted to go, that's when Chris jumped in on giving us all the supports and all the connections and all the links to all the manufacturing and all the people we needed to get involved to actually get this to become a proper product.
Yeah. So big sales, small sales. Chris, what was your first time, your reaction when Peter told you to do like a 3 mil take up or something like that?
Well, I think I've been pretty impressed since early on. I mean, obviously at the level that we design sails for, One Design, Olympic, and America's Cup boats, we're used to making small changes. But I've been really impressed by how sensitive, the changes are in the windsurf sails, and how good Peter and Nick are at picking up, little differences that we're doing in the designs and really calibrating, the direction we're going. And in a way, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're way more connected to the sail as a windsurfer. You're like directly holding onto the sail, whereas in a sailboat, it's, your sail is kind of like the engine on your car. You're only connected through your throttle and your seat, So, you make a change to the sail trim or the shape or something, you can see the difference in performance on the instruments of the boat, but you don't necessarily feel it through your hands and body and feet and everything like you do in a windsurfer. So it makes perfect sense. And we're getting really into the nitty gritty little 1 mil changes here and there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Peter mentioned M Sports. M Brands, and that's Mystic, correct? We like to like debunk little urban legends and hearsay and whatever. So correct me if I'm wrong. North wasn't going to build like a water sports distribution network from scratch, so they just like bought Mystic. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And for us to try to do this either online or build a network from scratch, that's harder than doing what we're already doing, which is building a brand from the beginning, from the ground up by itself. So
that's a bit of a flex, right? That's a little bit of a, a little bit of a statement of intent, I would say, right? We're just gonna buy this brand that's been on the market for like 25 years.
Either it's a statement, or I think it was a really clever management move by the upper management here at North Sails, which is run by Richard Lott, who I share an office with. He's, he and Sam Watson put together this purchase, and with the clear vision of, once we have a distribution network, then we can sell the kites really quickly. And, obviously Mystic is not only were we getting the distribution network, but I think they clearly like the marketing and the brand building capability of Mystic. And you've seen that with the North Windsurfing launch, where the Dutch Mystic group they've been 100% in charge of all branding and, the visual design and stuff of all the sails.
Yeah, we'll get to the designs and to the materials and all that stuff that I really want to get to. That's like my personal one more like managerial thing. So you have so the project is kind of taking off. There is distribution. There is probably a manager, and then like there has to be a sail designer. And at that point, I remember rumors flying around. It's going to be Robert Stroy. No, it's going to be Niels Rosenblad. No, it's going to be Monty Spindler. It's going to be this, that. At the end of the day, you're an in-house designer, right? That's been there, designing stuff for boats. And did you ever like have a conversation with like you say, like upper management? Why? Like, is it because of the technology that perhaps a conventional windsurf designer, conventional is probably they would get offended, but you know what I mean? Like,
well, I mean, I think it was, we almost had no choice but to do it in-house, because the technology, we'd already made the decision that we're going to do 3DI or bust. And we can't use, Mixed Sail or any other sort of Rhino or any of the other software that the other sail designers are using to design 3DI sails. Now, one thing North does is anything we do, it's almost always done internally in-house. That's all the machinery. It's not like we go, nothing is really off the shelf that could be used for anything else. So we have a pretty good programming team in the background that builds all our software and stuff. So all of our software and systems are all internal, and they use their own proprietary files and stuff like that. So it wouldn't be possible to, I guess, the easy way of saying it is getting sail designers, which we have about 50 of at North Sails, and a fair few of us know how to windsurf anyway, to learn how to design windsurf sails with help from experts like Peter, is a lot easier than training Robert Stroy or Ty Hawk or somebody how to design on the North Sail software, because whatever we did, it'd have to get done on our software, which ultimately is a little more advanced than the regular software that most other brands are having to use. I mean, Peter, do you have any inputs there?
Yeah, you have to imagine that we're not only looking at shapes, we're looking at actual mold shapes. We're looking at mold shapes, comparing them to flying shapes, because there's a big difference to the way a sail actually molds to the way a sail actually flies. We're also looking at loading, and there's a lot of loading analyzers in the program, which is shocking me, because in the windsurfing sail the industry, when I was at New Pride or when I was at Gun Sails, obviously you apply the materials that from experience are heavy enough to carry the loading into the sail. But what we learned in 3DI, and this for me was an eye more than a year just to figure out the tension in the sail by running fibers in a certain way, just like we do when we design a windsurfing fin, for example. It's a piece of material, and by running the fibers in certain directions or to the sail, you can actually influence the dynamic stability of the sail itself. So by actually overloading it, the draft doesn't automatically just move to the back. It actually stays where you want it to stay, because you're running your tension in certain directions and stuff like that. And this is sail design 2.0. So we're not just looking at shapes. We're looking at layups. We're looking at, we can use carbon, we can use aramid, we can use Dyneema, we can use polyester, we can use whatever we want, and we can tape it into the sails, and we can create these structures which are just 100 times more complex than a normal windsurfing sail.
Yeah.
So that just kind of really opens up, you need to have a designer who actually knows how to use that software, and who really understands, what we're looking for in a sail as well, because we can say, we want it like this or like that. Like Chris said earlier, on the sailboat, there's the stays that are holding the sail, and the boat won't actually feel the loading going through it. But when we're using them, you feel everything through your arms. You know that just as well as anybody else. So you need to have all of that translated into the design, not just the physical shape design, but also from a fiber layout and everything like that.
Yeah. So now that you made it really complicated, please explain in the most simple, understandable Damas windsurfer like myself, what 3DI technology actually is.
Chris, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So I think just to wind it all the way back, I was thinking about this also earlier today. North Sails sold North Windsurfing in 1991 or so. And that coincided right about the time in 1992 when North Sails came up with 3DL sails. And just to make things complicated, there is a difference between 3DL sails, which are more like membrane sails that some other brands have, although those sails are made in panels, versus 3DI sails, which were developed during the 2007 America's Cup. So 3DL sails were molded on a mold, but they had yarns running between films to share the loads. 3DI, the only thing that's similar with 3DI is it's molded as well on a three-dimensional adjustable mold and laminated on the mold. But 3DI uses very light composite tapes that are layered. It's basically additive manufacturing, where you can add as much tapes as you like in whatever direction and orientation as you like to satisfy the loads or the stretch, or how we're if we need to make sure we have reinforcements in the corners or the batten ends or batten pockets, stuff like that. We can add tapes in any direction we want. We stack them all on top of the mold, put them in a reusable vacuum bag, turn the vacuum bag on, laminate the sail under vacuum pressure and heat, and out comes a composite structure that's basically no patches need to be added, no reinforcements are added to the sail. We just cut the sail around the outline, sew a sleeve on it, and put our hardware on, and you're done. So, obviously it's a little bit more complicated than that, but it makes a one-piece complete structure that's been laid up by 3DI tape laying robots and molded on a three-dimensional mold.
So if you had to put a definition, 3DI is a 3DI sail is a one-piece sail with all sorts of materials running whichever way you want the load to be distributed, and yeah, it's molded one piece.
So one piece composite structure.
Yeah.
That the big difference is there's no films. There's the yarns are extruded into tapes. Each tape is about between 25 and 30 grams per square meter. So they're very, very light, lighter than, your normal pre-preg tapes that you would build a board from might be 150 or 200 grams per square meter. So they're extremely light. So we can layer them as many layers, as many orientations as we like, while keeping the structure pretty light.
So you have to imagine when one of those sails actually comes off the mold, the shape is there, all the reinforcements in the corners for your tack, for your clew, for your head, for your batten ends, all the batten pockets, the sail is completely finished. It's all internal, laid up by a computer-controlled tape laying machine. And
so as much as the materials might be a lot more expensive, the actual manpower needed to finish that sail and whatever, you're actually gaining a lot there, right?
Once the sail's on the mold, it takes two people 30 minutes to mold the sail. And I think if you were thinking about putting panels together where you have to put batten pockets in the panels, insignia around all the panels, and put the whole thing together, it's going to take a lot more than 1 hour's time. So we haven't got it to the point where we're just printing out sails one after the other, and we've got thousands of sails coming off this mold. But, one of these days we'd like to be at that point.
Yeah. So when it comes off the mold, I mean, there's like you mold it on one side, right? You mold it, let's say, on starboard tack or whatever. It has it has shaping. So then it comes off the mold. Obviously, it's let's say bendy or whatever. You can roll it sort of flat the way you roll a windsurf sail, but I think it's a different way of thinking about it. Do you have to like put load on the sail when you're molding it to be able to actually, because on a conventional sail, you have the let's say you have seam shaping on the seams between the panels, and you have, you know, your left curve and whatever, and the thing starts taking shape as you put tension, right? So on this sail, like, you obviously have that mold, but then what happens when the sail comes off it? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, just layman. For you guys, it's like you've done this for years, but you know.
These are great questions, because it is hard to visualize. And once you've been there and done it, you're like, oh, wow, that makes so much sense. But when the tapes come off the tape head machine, they haven't been cured. So they're sort of just like little pieces of cloth almost that have been sort of pseudo tacked next to each other, because the pre-peg cloth has some tack, but it's not sticky. It's kind of hard to describe. So you get what we call the complex, and it's a little bit like a bed sheet almost. It's pretty flexible, and we can do what we call drape it over the mold. So you're taking all the tapes and they drape over the mold, and they're tensioned really tight. I think the vacuum bags are stretched out over the mold, so they make a really glassy bent surface on the mold. And then the complex is also tensioned out really tight against the mold, so that all the wrinkles are pulled out as best as they can onto the mold surface. And then once the top film is applied and vacuum is applied, along with temperature, and the glues start to run, the whole sail, you can just see it form onto the mold, kind of like melting cheese onto, you know, a hamburger or something. And once you take, yeah, definitely. Once you take it off the mold and put it on the floor, you can see it's got the shape in it. But we have to wait 10 days before we can really move it. They need 10 days to cure after they've been molded.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, materials way more expensive, but way less man hours, let's say, to assemble a sail like that. Can we then expect the sail to be relatively like market priced, or is it still going to be, you know, triple because the materials are triple?
No. I think if you look on the website, the prices are published. We're starting at I think $8.99 for a wave sail. Actually, not that high at all if you compare it to some of the other brands out there.
Yeah, we're not the most expensive sails, and we're trying to position ourselves to be the best value sails out there. At the end of the day.
Yeah, you guys.
We're starting at 3.3 at $8.99, and if you compare it, for example, to if you want to compare it to a Severn S1 Pro, or you want to compare it to a duotone, what is that one called, the membrane version, which is still a sewn together sail, then we're actually quite a bit cheaper than that in the end.
Yeah. So either I listened to your North Sails podcast. It was either you, Chris, or maybe Steve, saying like you guys built 300 windsurf sail prototypes. I mean, that sounds crazy.
Yeah, it was more than we expected, and that's not necessarily because we tested a lot of different construction, different tape blends. We also started out using the yacht molds. So we kind of developed the structure of the sails and sort of the overall sort of feel to get the sails, you know, close to what Peter wanted with the yacht molds. Then at the same time, I was building the windsurf mold here in Connecticut. And we had to develop those shape or that mold, the way it worked. And, you know, we were trying a few different production techniques that were going to be a little bit more environmentally friendly than the traditional methods that we use to make 3DI sails. And some of the, you know, we were using heat blankets for a little while, and we ended up going back to infrared heating. So there was a lot of different iterations of, you know, different techniques to build the sails, different tapes that were used, different shaping, different concepts. You know, we're trying to make race sails as well as wave sails, and, you know, power wave sails and foil sails. And got a lot going on. So it's been a lot of sales, unfortunately. But I think
for me, it's a testimony to the complexity of what we're actually trying to do. We're not just trying to build another sail. If we wanted to try and build another sail, we would probably build 100 prototypes. You'd be really, really close to having a sail that's just as good as anything on the market. We're trying to build. What we're trying to do is something completely different. It's not along the same lines. Some of the old things you've learned in the past, you can't apply to the current situation, and what didn't work in the past may actually work now, and different tape layouts. And there's been such an incredible learning curve for everybody involved. For the guys at Nord Sails who are coming in from a sailing perspective, who are seeing how to design a sail completely differently, and for me coming from the windsurfing perspective and actually seeing all the opportunities that are there with the 3DI. And I think even with the 3DI, we're just only scratching the surface. This is the first launch we're doing with something that's a really, really good product. It's something that's really different than what's out there, as far as construction, as far as feeling, weight, you name it, durability. But I think we're only scratching the surface. I think that the true potential, can only be reached once we are 5-10 years down the road and really start to understand every detail of the animal.
Yeah. So for you, Peter, you worked at Neil Price. You were not there from day one, and then gun sales, and you know what I mean. You kind of step into something that sort of works already, and it's more about let's say maybe getting it over the hump or whatever. Here, you have all these expectations that this technology is new to windsurfing and it's going to be something revolutionary and whatever. And then you get the first prototype, and I mean, it's got to suck, right? I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, it's got to be. So how was that process like? And then,
the process was, the process was radical figuring it out. It was, we started with love curve changes of 30, 35, 40 millimeters. That's just chopping sails in half and gluing them back together and name it. But one thing that was very clear to me from day one is that the feeling that 3DI skin gives, it's something really unique. It's something that's really hard to explain. And that's what you felt from the first moment I took one of those sails in the water. You felt how easily it fills in. It's almost like a cloth sail. But as soon as there's tension in the sail, as soon as the sail is filled in, it is the most reactive, most responsive structure you've ever used. So it has the really subtle quality of a cloth sail, but then as soon as the tension is in, it's the most reactive thing you can imagine. And that's been there since day one. And that's, for me, has been like, okay, this is the direction we got to go. This is how we got to push forward. And actually, very quickly, we started to get to some pretty good sails already. Even though the mold, we were using a big boat mold, which wasn't able to make the complex shapes that we need for a windsurfing sail, but we were at least really learning about fiber layouts, what materials work, what is durable enough, which materials to avoid in what areas of the sail and stuff like that. So the learning curve in the beginning was extremely steep.
Yeah. Hey, so now for foils, when I'm doing R&D, every new wing is a new mold. How do you guys get around that? Because like you say, it's a big boat mold, and you can't. It's hugely expensive, right? A mold like that, it's big. It's it's not a tail wing foil mold, even though
they're adjustable. So the software gives the input to the mold. And the mold actually has hydraulic or electronic actuators in it, and it actually brings the mold into the shape of the design of the computer. So actually, we can mold a 3-3 wave sail on the same mold as where we mold an 8-0 foil sail.
All right,
It's just that the mold goes to completely different settings.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And what about for you? For sure, you have to design sort of around the technology, right? A fast race sail. A fast 3DI race sail will not be the same shape, will not be the same luff curve, will not be the same leech, will not be the same anything probably to a monofilm sail. I don't know, with boards, if it's a stiffer crease spear technology, the board always feels higher, right? Even with the same rocker and whatever. So what was the biggest challenge there? Can you give us some stuff, what's the biggest adjustment that you have to make? This doesn't actually work like that in that technology, even though for years you've been kind of used to it in the monofilm stuff.
Well, I don't think we started with any designs per se. So, I mean, we've been developing within our own software the whole time, and we didn't really start with any monofilm shapes or anything. I mean, Maciek would have measured luff curves off of the first wave sails we did. And that's probably the limit of what we've done as far as looking at what else has been out there. But every other step of the way has just been building upon step by step. And, you know, there have definitely been some backward steps that we took, but that's how you kind of explore and figure out what way we're going. And,
I guess I'm asking because some things would be universal, like aerodynamic stuff. Yeah, like outlines, you know, everything's going higher aspect and whatever. And probably, you know, some of the shaping as well to get a certain amount of drive and stability. You need, you know, a certain type of shaping. So I guess I'm asking what's...
You're really breaking up. You're really breaking up, Maciek.
Okay. I can see you. Yeah, you're moving now. You stopped moving for a while.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm asking what's universal and what's changing, which parameters, you know? I guess I'm just curious.
Well, Peter, why don't you answer that since you've been doing this for longer?
Yeah, no, we're doing. There's a lot that we can manipulate. You know, even without changing, for example, luff curve. You know, we can manipulate the tensions in the sail with the tapes, which is something that we've never really been able to do in film sails. That's pretty big for me. The other thing is
with changing a tape, right? You can't adjust it as the sail is let's say is done. You have to change the tape. You have to.
In the beginning, it was so radical. We would actually sew tapes onto the sail from area to area to try and experiment where we wanted the load to go. So you can actually do a lot of sewing. It looks like it looks terrible, but you're just patching this. You're just patching. You pretty much have a skin, and you just end up patching stuff on there to try and figure out where you want that load to go. Because the first thing is actually understanding what needs to be different before you can make the change. And you can't just go ahead and tape hundreds of sails. We did, but that's a different story. Then on the racing sail, usually on the film sail, you struggle a lot to get the head to open a lot, which is something on the 3DI sail because the top parts of the sail are so light, they actually end up opening very easy, almost a little bit too easily. So we're ending up with probably a little bit more luff curve in the head than you would on a regular sail. But that also has something to do because on the 3DI sails that we're doing, our luff sleeve is 100% structural. Where normally on the normal racing sail, windsurfing sail, you have a luff panel that's running inside the sail, which is just structural. It's taking a load, and the luff sleeve is pretty much just a piece of material that gets added around the sail to create the shape that you need. But actually on the 3DI sail, it's a single piece. The luff sleeve and the body is one piece. So you're actually, all the load, so the luff sleeve actually becomes a complete structural part, which makes it very different.
Yeah.
So you're ending up with very different luff curves. Also, the sails are incredibly light in the head, especially. So you can actually use a lot less luff curve without having a sail that starts to feel just like a bag of nails, you know? You know, when you take out luff curve and the sail just becomes spongy and soft, there's something nice about it when it's really flat, but as soon as you get some chop, it just starts to resonate and it doesn't work anymore. But when you lose that much weight in the top of the sail, all of a sudden you can make the sails a little bit more spongy because they come back super fast. So there's a lot of things that we're learning, you know, on the racing sail still today that are very much contradicting what I know from the past.
Yeah. Another urban legend. You mentioned your luff sleeve. Does your luff sleeve actually not contain cams and is blow up with a kite pump? Is that something that goes around for any reason, or?
April Fool's has passed, mate, quite a while ago now.
Yeah, I know.
We are doing an inflatable cam system, yeah. But it is still a cam. It's not. We're not inflating the whole sleeve, so it doesn't become a freaking Zeppelin or something like that.
Okay. Looking forward.
That's all I can say.
Yeah. I saw your face. You didn't really like that. No,
it's all good. It's all good. Soon enough, people will see it anyway, so it's all okay.
Yeah. Okay. You guys never really committed to any type of release date at the beginning, but you know, word gets around and it was like fall 2020, spring 21. fall 21. Now you're actually launched, in April of 22. I guess on behalf of every windsurfer, I just want to ask, what took you so fucking long?
For me, the big challenge was, we're trying to get production set up with something that's completely different than anyone's ever done before, and you're dealing with COVID at the same time, and the restrictions on traveling and not being able to freely go to Sri Lanka whenever you need to and solve the problems that have needed to be solved on the way. When you're doing something new, you're going to run into problems. That's a given. And we haven't just simply been able to jump on the plane and go to Sri Lanka whenever we wanted to get those things sorted out. And trying to do it like we are doing this podcast right now, but talking about an incredibly technical structure that you're trying to do, or trying to get some updates done on the mold to get the right shapes or the right lamination quality that we're looking for, etc. It's been let's just say a pain in the ass, if you wanted to say that. Yeah. But it's been fun, but it would have been a lot easier if you could have just simply gone to Sri Lanka and bang it out. Yeah.
You mentioned building molds in Connecticut. Excuse my English. Connecticut. So what? So you build it there and then you ship it off to an actual sail factory in Sri Lanka where they put it together. Why? If the manpower needed is so little, then why go through all that hassle and have it out of your hands, etc.
Because we were always going to finish the sails in Sri Lanka first.
To put on the batten pockets. Yeah, because I forgot that was another thing. So no stitches on the body of the sail, but then you need to stitch on the batten pockets. You need to stitch on the...
No, they're molded. They're taped in the sail. So those are in between all the layers of tapes. We have a tunnel that the battens fit in. So there's no batten pockets added to the sail, and actually no weight added with the batten pockets. And that's also one of the cool things with the process is the battens are totally separate from the shape of the sail. Traditionally, if you want more shape resolution, some portion of the sail, you need to add a batten there to put seam shaping there. And we can have the exact same shape of a sail, whether it's a 3-batten wave sail or a 4-batten wave sail or 5-batten power wave sail or whatever. They can all have the same flying shape. And because of that, we're traditionally probably going to have one less batten than most other brands just to save weight. But I guess getting back to your point, it's not just where the mold is. You need to be in close proximity where the pre-preg tapes are made, because those have a shelf life. You need a place where you can, if we're making 100 sails a week, those sails need to cure for 10 days. So all of a sudden you need to be able to store 150 sails somewhere flat. And you have to be able to transport them to another factory in Sri Lanka. Hopefully you're doing them all in BOI zones so that you're not paying taxes anywhere, or not taxes, you're not paying duties anywhere. And then also, North Sails, we don't have really good printing capability that's needed to get the graphics in the sails. So we went to, I think everybody knows, we're building our sails at Aquadynamics, or finishing our sails at Aquadynamics, but the mold was, they're molded at our sail making facility at North Sails by North Sails people. So we'll mold the sails and ship them to Aquadynamics.
Yeah. So just for people listening that have no clue what Aquadynamics is, it's probably one of the two biggest factories in the world, where Challenger, 0.7, Phantom, gun sails, a bunch of
quite a few more by now.
Yeah,
Neil Pride.
Yeah.
So what you have to imagine, Maciek, is that there's only 2 places in the world where they're making 3DI sails. One of them is in Minden, or one of them is in Nevada. Yeah, in Minden,
Nevada. Yeah.
And the other one's in Sri Lanka. So North Sails has its own factory in Sri Lanka where they produce a lot more than just 3DI sails. They do a lot of sail making there as well. But and that in conjunction with the North Action Sports Group making all their kites and everything in Sri Lanka, all the shipping and everything just makes so much more sense if you can consolidate all of that. So
an interesting side note is our factory in Sri Lanka. It's the biggest sail making factory in the world, but the only reason that factory exists is to deal with windsurf sales in the late 80s and early 90s. Originally, North sales lofts all over the world were making their own windsurf sales, and it's just starting to be, disruptive for yacht sales. So, the management group at North Sales said, all right, we're just going to build a factory in Sri Lanka because that's going to be the best place to build them. And that was another really smart decision, I think, versus China or other places in the world that we could have gone, Malaysia or wherever. And, that's where the factory got set up. And ultimately, during one of the sales of North Sales, windsurfing was sold because it was perceived to be a liability at the time. And we ended up with a factory anyway to develop yacht sales now. And now we're making windsurf sales there again.
Yeah. Okay, so now the pessimistic, hard to convince, stuck in his ways windsurfer comes in.
Is that you, Maciek, or no?
No, it's just, I like to have a few alter egos. So in windsurf racing, there's a pretty long history of different materials and solutions and things that come from sailing, but never really translated well into performance. I mean, I think it was you saying on that other podcast, on your North Sails podcast, Chris, that, monofilm sails in sailing, it's like something out of the 80s, pretty much, where, windsurfing has experimented with Technora membrane, different types of membranes and whatever. And especially in racing, where it's all performance driven, it never really translated well. And then on top of that, we have your delays, then, which suggests issues somehow, in a mind of, as I said, pessimistic, stuck in his ways windsurfer. You hear some rumors, like top riders were supposed to be on it and they refused because they were worried about performance. So the history is not really with it, is the moment, let's say the historical stuff doesn't really back your case. So sell me on it. So sell the freaking pessimistic, stuck in his ways windsurfer on that project.
Yeah, for sure. I can see a lot of the hurdles that have led to all the delays and, the different announcements of coming, not coming, and things like that. One thing you have to imagine is that any material that they applied in the past has always been by using the same construction technology. So we're always using seam shaping to try and get the shape of the sail and the desired form, so to speak, while what we are doing is, we're molding these single structures, which is quite different. Also, when you use materials in the past, they always off the roll materials. So they have a bias direction, or they have a non-bias direction, or they have a certain thickness, which is a given for that material. What is really unique on this technology is that we're actually able to transition from thickness. We're able to transition in thickness throughout the sail. So we have for example, the tack, which is I think 1.2 millimeters thick, and then going up to the leech of the sail, which is 0.1 millimeter, 0.2 millimeters thick, and it transitions seamlessly by adding or taking away tapes. So what you have is when the sailmaker or when a brand was able to buy a material off the shelf that may have been a very interesting material, you're buying one kind of material which may be applicable for one area on the sail, but completely unusable for another area on the sail, where we're actually engineering these sails from the ground up, and we're trying to get the stretch in the material where we need the stretch, and we're trying to get the stiffness in the material where we need the stiffness. And this has been an incredibly long path to figure out. This is also the reason why we are running later than we should have. This is also the reason why the racing development is dragging on, because we're not going to come out with the product until we feel that we are what is worthy of the label. Yeah,
and that label seems to be everything that's coming out and the entire market, and probably rightfully so. I mean, you wouldn't bring something quote unquote revolutionary if you didn't expect amazing performance. So then that grows expectation, right? That grows like something like, breeds something like we need to fucking smoke everybody out of the water on the first contest we're gonna do, you know?
Yeah, but you know how hard that is, because you're not just, yeah.
I know very well how hard that is, but you know also how quickly people run with narratives, and how if you launch something that is supposed to be revolutionary, and maybe it doesn't work for one reason or the other, or works, but it's not, 2 knots faster, which at this point in windsurfing, it's pretty impossible, I have to say. Then there's this narrative, it doesn't work, they failed, they were, so arrogant launching, even though they probably weren't, but it's that spin cycle. So you guys are aware of all that, and you're where is the measuring stick?
Now, of course, you're very aware of it. You're very aware of the whole situation, but we have to also ignore it, because you can't work with all that pressure on. You can't, how you call it? You can't make a product for the pessimist. You got to make a product for the purist. And the people who really believe that there needs to be some revolution in windsurfing, they will see what we're trying to do, and that it is actually a revolution. Because if you really look at windsurfing sail making, for the last 20 years, we're making sails out of monofilm. Sure, those sails are still winning races, so there's nothing against that. We're trying to prove, and we're trying to change that by coming with something that is going to revolutionize. And 2 knots faster on the straight, I think you're going to have a really tough call trying to find that, and nobody's going to claim that. But gaining 20 meters on the jibe, or gaining 5 meters every transition, or in acceleration, or whatever like that, those are things that I can see in these sails already, especially on the foil. Having a sail that's about 3 kilos lighter than anything out there, how easily all of a sudden you can whack your foil around the jibe without having all that swing weight in your sail. Those are huge advantages and revolutions on their own. Okay, so we're not revolutionizing the top speed. We're not all of a sudden going to break 60 knots. I don't think anyone is in the next 10 years. But, we can revolutionize individual sections. We can, you can take these sails and trash them on the rocks, and you can break a mast, because you got absolutely pounded on the rocks, and you can take a mast out, you can put a new mast in, and there's not a crease in the sail. You do that with a monofilm sail, the sail looks 10 years older instantly. Yeah. So there is revolutionary things already in these sails.
If I put my head through the sail, catapulting on my foil as I do like every month or so, how do I fix that then? Then it's fucked, right?
You glue it.
Yeah, it's going to be easier to fix, and the hole's going to stay the size of your head. You're not going to split your whole sail in half, that's for sure. Because we have tapes running all sorts of directions, your tear was unlikely to grow once you get a small tear in the sail.
When you put your head through a monofilm sail, the whole panel's gone. Let's say we've had sails here where you put the harness hook in it, or I would poke the fin through one. You can still go sailing; it doesn't matter. The shape stays, the tear doesn't get bigger. You just keep going. It's okay.
Yeah.
So that's a revolution in its own.
But Maciek, to your point, I think there's always going to be haters, and we can't play to the haters. And I don't think there's any one individual measure of success. I think our success won't necessarily be if we win the PWA in our first year. Our success is going to be if we manufacture, the amount of sales that we budgeted. We have happy clients. We don't have sales that are being returned for, mistakes that we didn't foresee. I think Peter's done a really good job, giving the sales a proper thrashing, and hopefully, that there aren't any issues that we have down the line. If our team riders are performing well and meeting their goals, and that's a good measure for us too. But that's certainly not our primary measure. And we'll do whatever we can to support our team riders. That's 100%. But at the same time, I think just going out and being faster or winning on the PWA isn't really going to be what decides if this was a success or not.
Yeah. Peter's listening to this, and like in his face, I can read like, fuck that, let's go win.
No, I mean, sure, winning would be the best thing to do to put the platform that we've created, in the limelight, so to speak, or in the spotlight. That winning takes a lot more than just having a good sail.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure, winning on Sunday, selling on Monday is always going to be the case on any sort of sailmaking brand, whether it's windsurfing or yachts. But it really comes down to the sailors as much as it does to the sails. Their boards or their fins or the masts, the booms, the whole Monty.
Yeah.
So you the other rider taking them out of the mark, for example, whatever. You can think of a few things.
Yeah,
crashed into.
Well, if you're fast enough, you're not going to crash into. But anyway, so Chris, like you mentioned quite a few things that you took out of sailing and implemented into windsurfing. Is there anything that you can grab from windsurfing and put it back into sailing?
I think that's a really good question. And certainly that is one of the goals of the North Sails group let's be honest, this has been a real pain in the ass for North Sails making these windsurf sails. We've made 300 sails that, aren't going to go anywhere. We're now producing sails. The margins for North Sails it's definitely going to be the loss leader. I can look out on the floor out here and see sails that are, $100,000 sails that are going to go out the door. It takes a lot of windsurf sails to, equal $100,000 sail out on the floor. But that's not necessarily the goal for North Sails. The goal is to learn from North Windsurfing, how we can apply art, graphics, branding, how a website should be run, how you grow, the strength of a brand. All those things are little things that North Windsurfing will certainly contribute to North Sails. But we've also seen manufacturing and tape concepts that Mickey applied to the wave sails are now fully in use in the Olympic 49er classes. And those will be sails that are used in the Paris Olympics, and the sailors love them because they used to use just regular paneled sails, and the riders or the sailors would have to buy 2 or 3 sets of sails at a time to find the fastest sails. Now they just get one set of sails and they're all identical. There's no more picking and choosing the best sails. They last longer, so they don't need to get their favorite sails and tuck them away and save them for 3 years for the Olympics. It's making life a lot easier for those sailors, and that's going to be the case for a lot of different classes as we learn to make these smaller sails. I think it's going to grow sailing away from the paneled sails, and we'll see more smaller 3DI sails in the market soon.
Yeah, for me, with all the delays that we've had throughout the time, one thing that has been very clear is that as much as we're learning in windsurfing, all of that technology is flowing straight back into the North Technical Group and is going into other products throughout the group, which are benefiting from all the work that we're doing. So as bad as I felt for it taking as long as it did, for us as an investment into getting these windsurfing products into the market, I know that there's a bigger picture gain as well as just a windsurfing product in the end.
Yeah. But you said in kind of past tense, like it did take that long, but you had your big launch, and I hate to be a dick again, but it's one sail. It's one sail and it's out of stock.
It's out of stock on the website.
It's out of stock on the website. Yeah. So your local shop. Yeah, that's
Maybe.
where you. Yeah.
I looked this morning, and they made 950 stock sales, or we've molded 950 stock sales. Take a while for those sales to make it all the way into the market and be out on the water. And unfortunately, I think we're going to be out of stock for a lot of sales for a long time. There is going to be a big demand for people who want those sales, and it's going to be really hard for us to keep up with that demand. Is that good or bad? I don't know. We're doing the best we can, that's for sure.
I think one thing you have to imagine, Maciek, is that when you are building a regular sail, you can just cut more panels of the same material and you can build more sails. But when you're producing foils, you have one mold. You can only make that many blades in a day. We are running into those same issues.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy.
One thing's for sure when I'm doing these podcasts, running a windsurfing brand is a bitch.
Theme, huh?
Yeah, definitely a theme. And I think this is a pretty good place to end it. I mean, I think it's really interesting what you guys up to. And as a windsurf fan, I guess I'm crossing my fingers to see some sails around and try them and see what's up.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to interview us. Such a fan of your show, so this is awesome.
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
A good word.
Cheers.
Cheers, Maciek. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye.
So there we go. Like I said, super interesting podcast there. And I hope that's answered a few questions. Going to be interesting to see how it plays out, how it's accepted by the windsurfing community. Let's watch this space. If you enjoyed that podcast, give us a thumbs up, let us know in the comments below who you want to see in the podcast, and also the live podcasts, who you want to see me asking questions to. If you watched the last one, Ask the Shaper, we had Patrick Detail. I think it was a really interesting one. So anyway, let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel. We are doing a podcast every Wednesday, so don't miss it.